Everyone, and welcome back to Let's Play Crystalis. The last part we got here in Mount Saber, and now we're gonna fight this guy. This is Kelbesk, or Kelbesk, how do you pronounce that? He is one of Dragonia's highest ranked knights, and he is actually what I consider the hardest boss in the game. He likes to move around and stomp the earth at us, somehow. And don't let him back you into a corner, because if he does, you're going to take a lot of damage if he can get up into you and touch damage. In fact, if you have the opportunity to either choose between getting hit by him or the rocks, choose the rocks every time. I don't recommend using your magic for this fight for healing. I recommend using medical herbs for it, actually. Because the level 3 wind attack is pretty much the best way to go about fighting him. But, while he's hard, he's at least quick to fight. And for beating him, we get the Flame Bracelet. Yes! So, now we've officially won the game even more. And hey, it's the Elder from, Leaf. And he's gonna just say, okay, we'll be fine, go shoo on to the next town, which is called Portoa. Which is right beyond here. I should mention, when it comes to the level 3 attacks, each one uses more MP than the last. Like, the first one used 8, I think this one uses 16, and I think the next two use 24 and 32 respectively. And you might be wondering who's talking to us. Well, I could have done this earlier as well, but what just happened was that Zebu actually talked to us through telepathy and gave us the paralysis spell. We'll put that to use momentarily. Just talking to this person so you can get a bit of context for later on, just in case. Now, Portoa here, for being a port city, only has one boat, and has a queen for being a place that only has 4 buildings. And I'm not sure how, but the queen seems to know about us, even though we just took down Mount Saber within the past 40 seconds. As we all know in JRPGs, news travels faster than we do. And also, if we try to go back in to talk to her after the second time, that guy will go in the way. However, there's also a fortune teller in this town that people mention, so let's go and visit her. Gee, I wonder who it is. And, yeah, pretty much the big part with this section is that you're going between the queen and the fortune teller over and over and over again. I will mention, though, later on in this part, it's kind of, they don't really tell you what you're supposed to do, because it's kind of hard to tell. The telepathy spell, as I mentioned before, will give you advice on it, on what's going on in the game. However, it gives you advice randomly, and there's also a chance it can recover your MP, so that's pretty cool. But here we actually need the paralysis spell, because once you do that, little conversation there, freeze this guy with paralysis, and you can go in when the queen's not in there. And you need to do this, by the way, because this place here, we'll keep in mind that water right there for later. Even though it's a dead end, this area is an event trigger, so you need to do this. You can't sequence break much in this game, as sad as that is to say as a Metroid fan. And we surprisingly do not get scolded for going in there, but we're just let off. Let's go talk to the fortune teller one last time. So now we need to go back to the palace, yada yada yada. I will admit though, this town is actually home to one of my favorite details in the game that I'll get into momentarily. Because after you've done all that, you can talk to the queen, and she'll give you this flute of lime. This is a key item that will unpetrify people. That'll come in handy later. However, in this town, in the item shop, there's something called the Fruit of Lime, which is an actual fruit, and I'm glad they translated that correctly. I'm actually kind of proud they did that right. And if you're playing the game for your first time, I recommend getting 1 or 2 of those. Why? Enemies in the upcoming area can petrify us, and if you don't have a Fruit of Lime, you're kind of screwed, if I recall correctly. The enemies in this area are not weak to the fire sword, a certain one aside, so the wind sword is the best way to go for us. The only enemy that's weak to the fire sword is that little red thing that just went across the screen right there. And as we all know, there's always something behind the waterfall. Especially in Final Fantasy 1, even though that's not a place I like to talk about. Well, actually, no, the Waterfall Cave in Ep.4 was not that bad at all. It was the ice cave that's annoying. Anyway, the Waterfall Cave here is our next plot destination. We'll find out why later on. And this place is rather maze-like. North and west are not only lead to the same area, but I recommend going there after finishing the place off. I'll get into why later. Those little red things that I was killing earlier can poison you, so watch out for that. Honestly, though, whenever you see an enemy in a cave, it's just best to stay away from it, because they can probably poison you. Or at least there's a high likelihood of such. And these guys look absolutely stoned. Oh god, drug jokes are not that funny, honestly. So yeah, use the flute of the lime on them and you can pass by. And that guy on the top there is actually that girl's father, if I recall correctly. These enemies are the ones you don't want to touch at all, be it them or their projectiles, because you can get petrified. And they also do a decent chunk of damage too, so it's just not a good idea at all. Oh dear! Doesn't help that my defense is pretty crappy. Admittedly, I could have bought the next best armor at the town, because I have enough gold, but I wanted to wait on that until after this area. Luckily, though, we don't have to deal with them without being able to, the Medusas, I suppose as they are, without killing them for long, because, in this chest, we get the next sword, the Sword of Water. So now we can kill those things with no problem at all. They can still petrify you, though, so, be careful. The Sword of Water is actually, I think, the one that's used the least throughout the game, if I recall correctly. Or at least by me. I generally just stick with the Sword of Fire, and, that's about it, actually. And with that, I think we're actually technically done with what we're supposed to do here. There's one other thing we can do here that I'm going to do, but I'm not sure if that's required. I've never checked. I've always done it because I knew it was there, so maybe it's optional? I'm not sure. Either way, it requires us to go to the other side of that river that was in the previous room. So let's head on over there. Also, I gotta say, the shield sprite actually reminds me quite a bit of the shield sprite in the Oracle Game Boy games. Game Boy Color Zelda games, even more accurately, actually. Though, I think it looked like that in Link's Awakening, too. It's been a while since I played Link's Awakening, actually. I do admittedly really like that explosion graphic. I don't know why. Anyway, there's a fork here, but to do what you have to do in the north, you have to go east anyway, so just do that. And I forget if there's anything to the south of us right now, but anyway, either way. We got another Flute of the Lime. What is this one used for? Well, as I just plainly stated, we have to go north of the previous fork. Hey, I recognize this guy. It's Akahana. He's the guy who we found the statue for earlier in the game, but for freeing him here, we get the shield ring. As I mentioned, I'm not sure if this is required or not. Either way, it's an accessory that increases your defense. The way it works is that it takes your defense value and adds your level to it. Since I had 14 defense and I'm level 8, 14 plus 8 equals 22. Later in the game, that ring gets downright obscene, actually, because, well, actually not really, because max level in this game is 16, if I recall correctly, so it doesn't get horribly obscene, but 16 extra defense, no one's going to complain about that. Well, shield defense, at least, so I can take projectiles quite a bit more bravely, I think. I can take more projectiles to the face, that's the baseline of it. Because as we all know, projectiles to the face are not fatal unless it reduces your HP to 0. Don't try that in real life, though. That's probably going to end badly for you, actually. And now we can finally head north or west. Like I said earlier, either will lead to where you want to go here. Because there's one enemy in this place that is kind of obscene for one reason. You remember how I said that money troubles will become pretty much nothing later in the game? Well, meet the reason why. This treasure chest. Why? Well, as I shall show right now, I recommend charging up a level 3 fire. It's not a treasure chest at all, but in fact a mimic. And for killing the mimic, you get 500 gold. It's obscene for grinding, and it's what I'm gonna be... well, not grinding, more like farming for gold. So you can probably tell what I'm going to do if I ever need gold from now on, is just come back here and farm that little guy. You do have to admittedly walk in and out of the cave every time, but it's nothing that bad. So yeah, I grind until I have around 6,000 gold. If you run low on MP, use the inn here in town. And because I did that, I'm actually going to go into the equipment shop and buy the next armor piece that I want, the platinum armor. Which is better than the leather armor in pretty much every way. In fact, it makes my defense 22-22, so that's pretty good. I'm gonna sell the old armor at the pawn shop, and then we're actually gonna head on our way, if I recall correctly. No, wait, actually, no, there is one other thing I have to do. We have to talk to the fortune teller. And apparently someone's waiting for us south of town, so let's go for that, shall we? I recommend resting at the inn here if you haven't done so already. And I equipped my rabbit boots off-screen because we need them coming up. The Sword of Water will also work against these guys, but I just prefer to keep the Sword of Fire on because I don't need to fight them right now. Also, as you can plainly see, my experience jumped quite a bit due to that money farming. Mimics actually get pretty decent experience points. Why is it that that red thing reminds me of a pea hat from Zelda? Or even worse, a Medusa head. Though the crows are still the worst enemy. Anyway, get your Sword of Water out. And I recommend putting the shield ring back on. If you have the Sword of Water, this guy will not only leave forever, he'll give us the Ball of Water, which allows us to charge up to that first level, or second level, rather. And the second level, the Ice Sword, or Water Sword, can turn certain things of water into ice. You can see where this is going, can't you? And this is Messiah. We'll find out more about her as we go on, but she went to Dragonia, and messing with them's never a good thing to do. So, in Part 5, we're gonna see if we can try and track her down. I don't, but if I recall correctly, we're gonna probably get sidetracked. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys then.